What happens when Hollywood's most respected actress walks into what should be a routine, late-night interview, only to face the most shocking display of host behavior ever caught on camera? In just 34 seconds, Stephen Colbert would unleash a series of comments so outrageous, so completely inappropriate, that they would destroy his reputation and send Scarlett Johansson storming off his stage in disgust. The Late Show studio felt different that night. The usual warm energy that filled the space seemed replaced by something colder, more tense. Scarlett Johansson sat across from Stephen Colbert, her posture professional yet relaxed, ready to discuss her latest film project. She had no idea she was about to become the target of the most unprofessional interview in television history. "So Scarlett," Colbert began, leaning back in his chair with an unusual smirk, "let's talk about your career choices." "Of course," she replied with a genuine smile. "I'm excited to share what I've been working on." But something in Colbert's tone immediately felt off. His usual charm seemed forced, artificial, like he was performing a different kind of show entirely. "You know," he continued, his voice taking on a condescending edge, "I've always wondered something about actresses like you." Scarlett's smile faltered slightly. "Actresses like me? Yeah, you know what I mean." Colbert's grin widened, but there was no warmth in it. "The ones who think they can just walk into any role, any project, and demand whatever they want." The studio audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the Stephen Colbert they knew. This wasn't how interviews were supposed to go. "I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at," Scarlett said carefully, maintaining her composure despite the clear hostility coming from across the desk. "Oh, come on, don't play innocent," Colbert shot back, his voice rising slightly. "You've made a career out of playing characters that, frankly, other people could have played better." The words hit the studio like a physical blow. Audience members exchanged worried glances. Even the production crew behind the cameras looked shocked. Scarlett's face went pale, but she kept her voice steady. "Stephen, I'm here to talk about my new film. If you have issues with my work, perhaps we should discuss them professionally." "Professionally?" Colbert laughed, but it was a harsh, ugly sound. "Let me tell you about professional. Professional would be admitting that half your success comes from your looks rather than your talent." The gasps from the audience were audible now. This wasn't just unprofessional, it was cruel. Scarlett's hands clenched slightly in her lap, but she maintained her dignity. "That's completely inappropriate," she said firmly. "I've worked for decades to build my career based on my abilities as an actress." "Have you, though?" Colbert leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with something that looked almost like malice. "Or have you just been lucky enough to be in the right place, at the right time, with the right attributes?" The studio fell into stunned silence. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure if they should continue filming this train wreck. Scarlett's face flushed with anger, but she still tried to salvage the situation. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here," she said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "I came here in good faith to discuss my work." "Good faith?" Colbert's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Like the good faith you showed when you took roles that should have gone to other actresses? When you made choices that hurt other people's careers?" This was the moment everything changed. Scarlett Johansson, one of Hollywood's most professional and respected performers, had reached her breaking point. Her eyes flashed with a fire that made it clear she was done tolerating this abuse. "You want to talk about hurting careers?" Scarlett's voice cut through the studio like a blade. "Let's talk about what you're doing to yours, right now." The audience could feel the shift in energy. This was no longer a one-sided attack. Scarlett Johansson had found her voice, and she was fighting back. Colbert's smirk wavered for just a moment before returning full force. "Oh, so now you're going to lecture me? That's rich." "I'm not lecturing anyone," Scarlett replied, her tone steady but fierce. "I'm simply pointing out that your behavior tonight is completely unacceptable. Your viewers deserve better than this." "My viewers love honesty," Colbert shot back, gesturing broadly toward the crowd. "They appreciate when someone finally calls out the pretense in Hollywood." But the audience wasn't with him. Their uncomfortable silence spoke volumes. These weren't the reactions of people enjoying honest commentary. These were the reactions of people watching something deeply wrong unfold before their eyes. "This isn't honesty," Scarlett said firmly. "This is cruelty disguised as commentary. There's a difference." Colbert's face darkened. "You don't get to come onto my show and tell me how to do my job. And you don't get to invite someone onto your show just to humiliate them," she fired back. "What exactly did you hope to accomplish here tonight?" "I hope to have a real conversation instead of another boring promotional interview," Colbert said, his voice growing more aggressive. But apparently you can't handle anything that isn't completely scripted and sanitized." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Scarlett shook her head slowly, her expression a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. "A real conversation would involve respect and professionalism. What you're doing is attacking me personally for reasons I can't even begin to understand. Maybe because I'm tired of watching talented people get overlooked while others coast on their reputation," Colbert snapped. "And who made you the judge of who deserves what in this industry?" Scarlett's voice rose for the first time, her composure finally cracking. "Who gave you the right to sit there and tear down people's life work?" The question seemed to catch Colbert off guard, but only for a second. His response was even more vicious than before. "I have every right to express my opinion. That's what this show is about. That's what I get paid to do." "Getting paid to have opinions doesn't mean getting paid to be cruel," Scarlett replied. "There are ways to discuss the industry, to critique performances, to have meaningful conversations about art and career choices. This isn't one of them. So, what would you prefer?" Colbert asked mockingly. "Should I just ask you about your favorite color and call it journalism?" "I would prefer basic human decency," she said quietly, and somehow those soft words carried more power than any shout could have. "I would prefer to be treated like a person rather than a target." The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the cameras. Even the production crew seemed to be holding their breath. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something much more serious, much more real. Colbert seemed to realize he was losing control of the situation, and his response was to double down on his attacks. "Well, maybe if you hadn't made so many questionable choices in your career, you wouldn't feel like such a target." The words were like gasoline on a fire. Scarlett's eyes flashed with pure anger. Questionable choices? Like what exactly? Like working hard to build a career? Like taking on challenging roles? Like trying to grow as an artist? Like taking roles that weren't meant for you, Colbert said with venom. Like making decisions that hurt other people while you climbed the ladder. This was the accusation that broke everything wide open. Scarlett stood up from her chair, her whole body radiating fury. "That is enough," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I will not sit here and listen to you make accusations about my character based on nothing but your own twisted perspective." "Sit back down," Colbert demanded, his voice filled with authority that no longer carried any weight. "We're not finished here." "Oh yes we are," Scarlett replied, her voice like steel. "I'm done being your punching bag for whatever personal issues you're working through tonight." The audience watched in stunned silence as Hollywood's most composed actress faced down one of television's biggest hosts. This wasn't supposed to happen. Guests didn't walk out. Hosts didn't attack their visitors like this. But here they were, in completely uncharted territory. "You can't just leave in the middle of an interview," Colbert said, standing up himself now, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "Watch me," Scarlett shot back. "You invited me here under false pretenses. You lied about wanting to discuss my work. Instead, you've spent the entire time trying to tear me down for your own entertainment." "I'm trying to have an honest conversation about the industry," Colbert insisted, but his voice cracked slightly. Even he seemed to realize how weak that excuse sounded. "Honest?" Scarlett laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There's nothing honest about ambushing someone with personal attacks. There's nothing honest about using your platform to bully a guest who came here in good faith." Colbert's mask was slipping completely now. The smooth television host was gone, replaced by someone petty and desperate. "You're being dramatic," he said, but even the audience could hear the uncertainty in his voice now. "I'm being dramatic?" Scarlett's voice rose to fill the entire studio. "You spent 20 minutes attacking my career, my choices, my character, and I'm the one being dramatic?" She turned toward the audience, and for the first time that night, she spoke directly to them. "I want everyone here to understand something. I came here tonight excited to share my work with you. I prepared stories about my latest film, funny moments from the set, things I thought you might enjoy hearing about. Instead, I've been subjected to a level of disrespect that I wouldn't tolerate from anyone, anywhere." The audience began to murmur, and the sound wasn't supportive of their host. They could see what had happened. They could see who was in the wrong here. Colbert seemed to panic as he realized he was losing his own audience. "Scarlett, please, let's just calm down and finish the interview properly," he said, his tone suddenly shifting to something that might have been an attempt at reasonableness. "Properly?" she repeated, incredulous. "Now you want to do this properly? After spending the entire time trying to humiliate me on national television?" "I think you're misinterpreting my questions," Colbert said weakly. "I'm not misinterpreting anything," Scarlett replied firmly. "I know the difference between tough questions and personal attacks. I know the difference between professional journalism and whatever this was supposed to be." She began moving toward the side of the stage, and Colbert actually took a step forward, as if he might try to physically stop her. "Where are you going?" he demanded. "I'm leaving," she said simply. "I'm walking away from this disaster before it gets any worse." "You can't just walk out of my show," Colbert said, his voice getting higher and more desperate. "Your show?" Scarlett stopped and turned back to face him. "This stopped being your show the moment you decided to use it as a weapon against someone who did nothing to deserve your hostility." The cameras were still rolling, capturing every word, every expression. The production crew seemed frozen, unsure whether to cut to commercial or keep filming this historic meltdown. "I have a responsibility to my audience to ask hard questions." Colbert tried one more time. "No," Scarlett said firmly. "You have a responsibility to treat your guests with basic human dignity. You have a responsibility to use your platform responsibly. You failed at both tonight." She looked out at the audience one more time. "I'm sorry you had to witness this," she said to them directly. "You deserved better entertainment than watching someone try to tear down a guest for no reason." Then she turned back to Colbert for the final time. "And you," she said, pointing directly at him, "should be ashamed of yourself. This isn't comedy. This isn't journalism. This is just cruelty with cameras rolling." With that, Scarlett Johansson walked off the stage, leaving Stephen Colbert standing alone in front of a silent, shocked audience. The man who had tried to humiliate one of Hollywood's most respected actresses had instead humiliated himself in the most public way possible. As she disappeared behind the curtain, the studio remained eerily quiet, everyone understanding they had just witnessed something that would change everything.